Can't I just move on to my other point, which is a slightly wider point? At this really critical moment, and obviously a very difficult moment in your life, you had reached the stage where you weren't going to get a second resolution, military action was imminent. Now, you had been working intensively for months, indeed for a year, to try to create a supportive environment, and we have discussed elements of that already, but you hadn't actually got a clear and strong international consensus for this action. Public opinion here in the UK was divided. No really major progress had been made on the Middle East peace plan, which you and I discussed earlier. We hadn't got the second resolution, and you were also, I think by this stage, starting to hear warnings from people like Brigadier, as he was, I think, Tim Cross, who came to see you in Downing Street and saw Alistair Campbell, I think, that the post-conflict preparations being made by the Americans didn't look at all good. At this point, you must, I suppose, have had some pause for thought. Did President Bush at this point, when you hadn't really satisfied the preconditions you wanted to achieve, offer to go it alone and offer you a way out?
I think the Americans would have done that. I think President Bush actually at one point shortly before the debate said, "Look, if it is too difficult for Britain, we understand." But I took the view very strongly then, and do, that it was right for us to be with America, since we believed in this too, and it is true that it was very divisive, but it was divisive in the sense that there were two groups. There was also a very strong group in the international community, in Parliament, I would say even in the Cabinet, who also thought it was the right thing to do. So, for example, in the European Union at the time I think 13 out of the 25 members were with America. Japan and South Korea were with America, major allies lining up with America.
Clearly, there was support, but I suppose this was a long way short of what you would have hoped to have had.
I would have hoped to have had a United Nations situation at which everywhere was on the same page and agreed. Sometimes that doesn't happen.
In Kosovo, one didn't have unanimity, because the Russians threatened to veto, but you had much stronger support. The first Gulf War, there was pretty much universal support, Afghanistan and so on. So this was a much more difficult situation for you.
It was a really tough situation, yes, and in the end, as I say, what influenced me was that my judgment ultimately was that Saddam was going to remain a threat and that in this change in the perception of risk after September the 11th it was important that we were prepared to act. Our alliance with America was important, and, to put this very clearly, we had been down a UN path that I genuinely hoped would work. I hoped that 1441 would avoid conflict happening.
Although, I think you said this morning you weren't terribly confident it was going to work. You hoped it would work.
I did hope it would work. I wasn't confident about Saddam, I think for perfectly good reasons. He was someone who had been defying the UN for 10 years, and, as we know now, he hadn't really changed his intent. So I could see a situation in which you might be faced with this tough choice. But I was doing absolutely everything I could to try and avoid having to do it.
Jack Straw the other day referred to a plan B that he had floated with you. I think. I don't remember his exact words, but implying that he saw a case for it, which would have involved only partial involvement by us in the military action, but not sending the ground troops in, as I understand it. What was your view of his advice?
Well, that was a possibility, as I think we discussed this morning. In fact, our own military, in a sense, to their great credit, were in favor, if we were going to be part of this, to be wholehearted.
They are bound to. They are out there ready to go, and troops in that situation don't want to have to come back again, do they?